So I'm going to bring up Wayne Mackey. The three trainers we're going to have today are all guys I've been in the barn with over the years and got to know them, got to respect them. Wayne Mackey trains out at the Thoroughbred Center in Barn 10. He's been there since, he told me, 19 years. He had a little success. He's a very modest guy. He trained Proud Spell and Believe You Can when he track-climated him, you know, and I knew the guy for a long time before he ever told me this. Anyway, Wayne, come on up here, and while he's doing that, I want to get Alex Clarkson, who's going to be on the program in a minute. Come on up, Alex, and Mark Hubley. Mark was here before. There he is, okay. Anyway, he track-climates horses for, and I'll have him explain that in a second, but he also trains in his own right. In fact, Wayne, you won one the other night at Turfway, won a maiden special at Turfway?
Yes, that's right.
Didn't you? You won one at Keeneland this year, didn't you?
No, not this year.
Not this year. All right. Anytime you win one at Keeneland. Anyway, he's a multiple stakes winning trainer in his own right, but we're going to have him here today to talk about track-climate. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask him some questions, and then at the end we're going to open this up and let you ask all the 7 people up here questions, okay? Wayne, tell them about the size of your stable and the number of employees you've got. I know you've been there 19 years.
The size of my stable varies from what time of year it is. When I'm during the busy season with the young babies coming in, I may have as many as 30 horses and probably as many as a dozen employees to handle those 30 horses.
It's interesting. There's a lot of turnover in the track among personnel, and I haven't been in Wayne's barn in 5 years, and I was asking him, and all the guys, the same guys are still there, same riders, same grooms.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've got a crew that's been, for the most part, been with me for a number of years. My main rider's been with me for 15 years. A couple of my grooms have been with me for 10 years. So we've got a real stable crew, and I think that certainly helps the process.
When you get a horse, we've been going through how the horses should be brought up to the point that they're turned over to you. When you get the horses, and you get them from different places, I think, are they here where we're talking?
Yeah, basically that's the point that I get them. When they've been broke on the farms and they've been given a foundation of a certain level of fitness. Some of them have seen gate work, some of them haven't. But yeah, they've been broke. They've been able to, most of them, you know, they come in and they can, you know, they've been where they can ride them in a field and do figure eights and all that basic stuff. Most of the ones that I get have already had that done. So when I get them, they're hopefully ready to go right onto the racetrack.
Can you, when you get a horse, can you assess it pretty quick where it is based on this?
Oh yeah. When you put the tack on them after they arrive, after the first day, and if they take to the saddle, and then you start the process basically the first day just like you would at the farm. You throw the tack on them, you turn them in the stall without the rider, you have the rider jump on them in the stall just to make sure that they're okay, that they have been broke and they know the basics. Then you would lead them out of the stall around the shed row with somebody leading them around, and then you would have the rider just ride them in the shed row for a few minutes that day, and if everything went well, you'd go right outside and ride around the grounds, not necessarily to the track, but you would just ride around the grounds just to get them acclimated before you actually took them to the racetrack.
What kind of reactions you get the first day you go to the track?
Well, most of the ones that I get are very well broke, so it's a process that they the actual doing what I just said, they take to doing that right away, where you can get on them, ride them around the shed row, ride them out the barn, down the horse path around the grounds. Now some of them, of course, even the ones that have been well broke, when they make that transition from the farm to the almost racetrack environment, it is, as you all have been saying, very stressful, and a lot of them take several days or even a couple weeks just to get to the point where they are used to being in the stall by themselves most of the time, where they're alone and not being able to be turned out with their other horses. So some of them it's easier, and some of them obviously takes a little longer.
Do you have a typical period before they settle in and they're ready to start?
At that point, while it is a training facility, so there's horses being trained all morning long, breaking and breezing. We try to start the new ones out late in the morning, so the track is quieter. No horses hopefully no horses would be breezing, and you would just take them to the racetrack, and you wouldn't try to do anything real fancy with them. You would just, you would go on the on gap and jog straight off and go runs around the racetrack, just to kind of get them used to going to the track and going on the gap and going forward all the way around.
Okay, now I'm going to act like a typical owner. Now you've had my horse 3 days, and is this one going to be able to win the Derby, you think?
Well,
the question is, the real question is, how long do you have to have a horse before you have some idea what you got?
Well, I don't think you can totally really ever know until you actually start racing them, as you've already said, probably. But yeah, I think you start seeing signs with the ones. To me, the first month or so, the ones that I think that really start to stick out are the ones that mentally adjust to the new environment of being in the stall 23 hours a day, and all the stress of all the horses, coming and going, and all the feed trucks and everything that they have to deal with. And the good ones, you probably would look back and say they might have just a little bit handled all that a little bit better. They just kind of they relaxed and settled into it a little bit more.
Well, that was kind of my next question. With the 2 Oaks winners that you trained, did they stand out something special? Were they, a week after you had them, did you say, boy, we're going to win the Oaks with these 2?
No, no, but they both of those fillies, Believe You Can and Proud Spell, both of them were in that category of just the mental aspect that first month. They just seemed to really take to it, and they just didn't really care, and they acted like they'd been doing it their whole life. They just, the first day we put the tack on them and rode them right out of the barn, they didn't care. And then the first day we took them to the track, they didn't care. And the first day we took them to the starting gate, they didn't seem to mind that. So it was just that mental aspect that they seemed to accept it.
It's funny, you talk about the mental, because we tend to think of these horses in physical characteristics, and we kind of, when I read articles in magazines, they don't talk about the mental side of it very much.
Well, that's true, and I think that's something that's probably underrated, is that the good racehorses, it's very rare you're going to see one that, just doesn't have the mental makeup to be a racehorse. They're just something about the good ones that they just have better. They're smarter, I guess, is maybe one way to put it.
Let me ask you, what's the most frequent health problem you encounter?
Well, now, with the 2 Oaks winners, it was a situation where we had them both. I had Proud Spell a little bit longer than Believe You Can, but with both those fillies, we had got them up to a point where they were had what you would say flopping from the gate, where they would go in the gate with the doors closed in front of them, just like a race situation, except they didn't ring the bell. And then we would have them breezing easy quarter miles. So, and with Proud Spell, it was over a period. We had her like nearly 5 months, and Believe You Can a little bit less than that. So they were both at that about that point where they were breezing.
So they were flopping out and breezing a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, before I leave you, I want to ask you 2 questions. One, you watched the lead up to you coming up, okay, and heard what we said. Is there anything that we talked about that you disagree with, that you would say, no, Ed, I've got a different opinion on that? Or
no, not really. I think that everything that you all have talked about up to this point is I do agree with. I think that the thing that I do, the main thing I do, is that it's the transition from the farm to the racetrack, and so it's almost like being at the races, but just not quite. So it's just as you mentioned, they got to get used to the horses coming and going, and when they go to the track and the horses breezing up to the inside of them, they can't overreact to that, and just the whole things that they're going to see when they actually get to the races. We kind of simulate that more or less at the training center that I'm based at.
Yeah. Okay. Last question: what's the best horse you ever trained, and why?
Well, I personally. I guess of the ones that I've had, Proud Spell was the best. I didn't actually train her. Larry Jones trained her. He trained Believe You Can also. But those are the 2 best that I've had. I've had several other good ones. I've had 2 champions that went to Canada. That Biofuel, who was Horse of the Year in Canada, and another filly, Two Indiewee, who was the champion in Canada also, that I had got going for, that we sent to Canada. So those were also two other good ones that we had. So actually, though, I think Proud Spell was the best of the whole bunch, though.
Okay. All right. Stay right there. We're going to come back to you in a minute. Okay, I want to show you this, folks. This is what's called a starters list. This is a list of the horses that can't run in the state of Kentucky until they're okayed by the starter because they've acted up. And you can't read those names up there, but some of the best trainers in America have horses on the starters list. And the comments are things like fractious, flipped in the gate, flipped behind the gate. My favorite, all-time favorite was, there were two actually, my all-time favorite was came out of the gate, ran behind the starting gate, and froze. Now, I don't know how they ran the race with the horse frozen behind a gate. And then the other one that I liked was never again. Anyway, the reason I put this up is it doesn't matter how good you are. You can be a national top-ranked trainer. You're going to have some gate problems once in a while. And so the gate is, I think, overlooked by owners as a place that causes problems. And I think Wayne's point, and everybody's point is, get it behind you, do it right. And as Spec Alexander, the starter here at Keeneland, told me one time, get this horse fixed in the gate. I had a really bad one. He said, get it fixed before you get it fit. Mark, since I've known you, you've trained at two places. Sometimes you're at the training center and sometimes you're here. Is that because you like one better than the other, or are you fighting for stall space, or?
Well, I can't really decide which one I like better. You know, sometimes if the horses are doing well, I like them. I like where I'm at. If they're not, I generally like the other place better. So.
But it's not based on poly or dirt.
I have issues with polytrack and also with the dirt track. So.
Okay. I see you. You're one of the guys that comes to a track on lead pony, most of the time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Can you explain why?
Well, one, I like to keep active and be. I like to be on different places of the racetrack to watch the horses go. I may want to see a horse breezing. I kind of like to see them come around the turn a lot and see how they're coming as they go into the stretch. And sometimes I like to be down at the finish line and see how they finish up. The same is true with the babies. I like to see them come off that turn and see if they're going strong and they've still got it going. And sometimes I like to be where they pull up, the same thing, to see if they're too much or not enough or so on. So, and then I just have a number of ponies, and you know, they're like my buddies. So I like to ride them. And
I noticed that one pony you were on yesterday looks like it eats the same place I do. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. I've noticed you tend to bring your young horses up in sets. Okay.
Yeah.
How long do you do that before you begin to take them off individually?
I try to keep them in sets, generally up at least till they start breezing.
Okay.
And you know, if you have the numbers of babies, I think you're better off. It's almost the more, you know, if you can bring them, if you bring 4 or 5 at a time, and you can get 2 to follow 3, and then we generally try to move them around on the track too, so they trade places and they get used to coming up in between other horses or come up on the rail or outside and all those kinds of things. And you try to keep your babies matched ability-wise. You know, you have some that are more forward or more precocious and they're going strong, and one is struggling to keep up, and mentally that one's not sure wants to be there and so on. Then you got to get that one matched up with one that's kind of in the same place and so on. But we're very fortunate because we have a farm too. You know, it's nothing to take a baby home for a week or 2 weeks or 6 weeks and then bring them back, kind of like what Margot has.
Give us your viewpoint on the impact of a gate crew, either good or bad, on your training situation.
I think that's, you know, that's huge. That's a huge factor. And, um, you know, here at Keeneland, I think they have one of the best gate crews that I've been around. And if you have a gate crew, especially here at Keeneland, they will call the track that you're going to and talk to the gate guys up there and give them an idea of what you have. But we don't do any gate work at the farm. That's an area that the gates can be very dangerous for the horse and for the riders. And they have a great gate crew here, so we do all that here. But we'll say this, we teach all our yearlings at the farm how to get on and off trailers. And if they'll walk on and off a trailer and do it nicely, they'll probably walk in and out of the gate. You know, it's kind of the same thing.
I'm going to interject something here. I think a bad gate crew is worse than no gate crew.
Well,
I know that sounds crazy, but I think you can get in trouble. I'd rather wait till I could get a good gate crew to do the horse, personally. Last question, what's the best horse you ever trained and why?
I don't know who the best one is, but my favorite one was a filly we had named Miss Mary Apples, and we bought her here at Keeneland. And she won her first start at 2 in April at Keeneland, and she went on to become graded stakes place and was a nice filly, and she's had a couple stakes winners, so I kind of had her from day one and broke her and trained her, and now we breed her, and it's been a lot of fun with her, and unlike the good horses that behave, she was very badly behaved. They're very bad at the gate, bad in the paddock, very hard to break, very hard to gallop. But I pick up the laundry every morning in the barn she's in now, and I give her a carrot every morning, and it's been a great ride. I mean, you know, I have her 2-year-old and her 3-year-old and her 4-year-old, and it's been
Obviously
so rewarding.
a very special horse to you. Yeah.
She's been great.
Okay, I'm going to switch and go to Alex Clarkson here. Alex, you train a smaller group of horses, right? And so how do you deal with the fact that you may only have a couple 2-year-olds in this, you know, and you can't really do sets like as easily. How do you deal with that?
The horses I get they're from South Carolina. They're already been broke. And they've had their gate schooling and everything. So most of the foundations are already done for me when I get them. So Dr. Chandler's horses are usually bred to go long on the grass, so there's never no initial rush for them. And he allows you the time to develop them. And so it's an easier game for me that way, because most of the work is done. And when we get them up to going to the gate and stuff like that, as I said, they've been in the gate, so they're not usually afraid of it. They're not claustrophobic or nothing. And it's just, as I say, they're not sprinters. So we usually try and teach them patience and sit and try and teach them how to sit, relax, and then finish at the end. And that's mostly what we do with them, with our babies, because we don't have any, as I say, sprinters, you know, like early 2-year-olds. They're usually long, and they don't run till they're 3. He does very rarely run 2-year-olds.
Okay.
And that's just the horses that I deal with, you know.
Right. Okay, now you personally get on horses every morning.
My wife Patty and I, we gallop all the time. We've been doing this for many, many years. So it's nice to be able to do it, and we can connect with each other, how the horses are going, we staying together, and just keep the horses in a happy mode, you know. And I think with babies, especially babies, you have to leave them on a good note at the end of the day, more than anything. You know, if something happens on the track and they get all upset, it's more important to bring them home and leave them relaxed than it is to, say you're going to gallop a mile and a half and something happens, a loose horse, and they close the track. So you're all leaving. Well, that's okay. Just make sure the horse is in the stall and he's not eyes popping out when you leave him. Make sure he's good and relaxed if you have to go around the shed for a long while, just so that the next day he won't be worrying about that, you know, basically.
You mentioned the gait, the horses you get from, they're pretty good gait horses, right?
They've all been schooled walking through. They don't break them. They don't breeze them or nothing. They just walk them through the gate so that when I get them, you know, they look at it and then they walk through it, but they don't get all claustrophobic.
But you lock them
in
up
there.
the first time.
Well, we walk them through. The gate crew up at Keeneland is really good because they know these horses that I'm coming up. They didn't just come off the farm a month ago and we're trying this. They know that they're being educated somewhat. So we walk them through, and it's say we just want them to leave the gate. They don't have to leave like that fast right away. Just get in the process of doing all this, and when we're ready to send them out of there, you can educate them and say leave them with a good thinking spot for them, that they're not afraid of the gate. So when you take them up there, you know, once you breeze them out of there, we usually, once we've broken from the gate and breeze, we'll take them back a couple of days later, 2 or 3 days later, and stand them and back them out of the gate, so they don't think every time they go, here we go again, you know, so you can get them to relax. And that we work a lot at the gate in relaxing them, because if you don't have any patience at the gate, you probably it's gonna be really hard to win, because you need to be patient there.
How long does it take before you can tell what the natural affinity of a horse is, whether it's going to be short, long, grass, dirt? Can you tell before you race them, or do you have to race them to tell?
No, you can usually tell before. I mean, their breeding should indicate somewhat to start with, and the shape of the horse. If he's long and lanky and tall, he's probably not going to, him or her is not going to be a sprinter. If they're small and bulky, you can look at the frame of the horse. And if he's bred for like quick, you know, that's probably where you're going to be at with him, you know.
Yeah.
Usually when you're galloping them and galloping in company, after a while, once you're in the motor, like the 2-minute lick, you're picking up the pace, then you can usually have a good idea where you're at from there, whether you're going to go short or long. You know, a good assessment can come from there. But again, mostly the horses I get are bred to go long on the grass. Very few sprinters.
I come back to that because I want to, there are a lot of views how to do this, and I want to give everybody the opportunity. Alex, I got to ask you the question. What's the best horse you ever trained?
Well, best, Keep Up. Best I ever trained, probably Keep. He's the only graded state winner I ever had, so it'd be him.
They do stand out.